few words of my background here to start with. I've been a software entrepreneur myself, studied a handful of software companies in the 80s. Some of them fairly successful, solid information technology, for example, raised a huge amount of venture capital money, was sold to IBM later on. I was the CEO of the company for the first 5 years. What I learned as being a software entrepreneur, that it's good to have venture capital, and it's good to have venture capitalists who really add some value to the companies as well, not only the money. And indeed, I dreamed of being a venture capitalist of myself during those days, and it happened a few years later. Between being a venture capitalist and software entrepreneur, I was a business angel for a few years, just investing my own money and my own knowledge on several startup companies. Nexit, the venture fund I'm working with, is doing mobile and wireless only, operating in Helsinki, in Stockholm, and in Silicon Valley. And indeed, we believe strongly that bridging the Nordic or European innovations to US makes sense, as US is the core exit market for technology companies. Some 2/3 of the value of publicly traded technology companies resides in North America. And as well, almost 75% of all M&A transactions in technology are initiated by US buyers. So US is the exit market for technology startups, and it's important for VCs and also for entrepreneurs who are looking for great exit to understand that and utilize it. This is our team. We have 2 partners in Helsinki, 1 partner in Sweden, and 1 full partner in US, and we have a venture partner and other stuff. We are not a very big operation as such, so the total amount of funds under management is 150 million euro. We have invested somewhere close to 30 companies so far. So that was about Nexit and my background. Now I'll jump to the subject today. And when I'm trying to explain a bit what venture capitalists think about the team, what kind of teams we pick up, what is important for us when we choose the team. But before I go to that detail, I try to explain what venture capitalists in general are looking for. So we invest other people's money. In case of Nexit, we have some 7–8% of the money we invest is our own money. So we are a big investor in Nexit as ourselves, but mainly the money is coming from other sources. When we look the product we sell to the investors might be big pension funds or other sources which are able to invest millions of euros in high-risk projects. When they choose to invest in venture capital, they understand the risk is fairly high. There is a fairly high risk that they lose substantial amount of the investment. But also, it means that in order to justify such a risk, the potential return should be bigger as well. And if the investment just returns similar amount of money that you might get from investing in public companies, it's not a good option. We should be able to offer potentially a fairly high return, substantially higher return that people get in average from investing in public companies, for example. So it means that we should be able to articulate that there is a good chance for us returning, let's say, over 20% IRR annually. So the target is fairly high. But what that means in reality, if we look venture funds, even the most successful venture funds in US, almost every 3rd company goes busted. Maybe 1/3 goes so-and-so and returns the money invested in, and 1/3 of the companies creates great returns. If the company that's creating great returns only returns 5 times the money is back, there's an equation which explains that if 80% of the money is invested in the companies and roughly 20% is going to the management fees running the operations, we end up returning 1.6 times the money to the investors. But if the money is locked up for an average of 5 years, it means an annual interest rate of 10% roughly. So that's not plenty enough. It's not good enough. If I do that, I might be able to get the new fund, but I wouldn't be a big hero among the investors. To make things really happen, and what we really target in this business is get somewhere above the 20%, which means that we got to be looking for companies where the exit potential is somewhere like 10x, where we return the money we invested in 10 times. And that's the math, and that's the reason there behind. And that kind of a 10x thinking is the thinking which we use when we try to pick up the right companies we invest in. So what we look when we invest into companies, we look in several things. We look the management, we look the market potential, we look the exit potential, we look how this business could be differentiated and protected from the competition. We do risk analysis of other things and funding need. And then there's the business model is indeed the big thing, which is kind of combining all these things as a one thing. We try to understand how the business is run and what the business model is like. But there is three things which are more important than all the others. This is more of a joke, but there are three things. The one thing is management, the second thing is management, and the third thing is management. And these three things are more important than the others. The reason is fairly simple. If you have a great business plan and great opportunity, and just the medical management team, they typically can blow it up pretty fast. And if you have a great management team, but a bit of a problems with technology and the market and stuff like that, they'll fix it. They'll change their course, they re-engineer stuff, they hire new people, they just make it fly. So for us as VCs, it's a lot easier ride to the success if we have the best people in there. And that's the very simple way of explaining why we tend to look the team a lot. But the reality in Finland or in Estonia is that we have fairly limited amount of entrepreneurs, especially limited amount of serial entrepreneurs. So having the luxury of picking up the most experienced people is not the reality. The reality is that we got to do some compromises here. We invest in companies even though that we know that the teams are not perfect yet. There are steps to be achieved to get the company there. So the management team issue is the single most important thing for VCs. What does it mean? To get that 10x return, it means that the company should go global. The management team should have also a global view to the market as well. They should maybe know the market and the big players and kind of all the relevant people and businesses globally. That would be a perfect thing. So having a deep network within the target market, global network within the target market, makes sense. That enables more rapid international growth. So then it should be the thinking of the team should go around business opportunities, not creating new technologies, not creating new gadgets, but finding business opportunities and making businesses around those business opportunities. Being customer-centric, being business-centric. Quite often, in Finland at least, we see a lot of teams where the majority of the thinking is around technology and making better products, but not really thinking who needs those products and how money is made with those products, but rather on how to make just better mousetraps. Then one important skill is to have the ability to really build a well-functioning team. And it means that having a one perfect individual being a rock star might be great, but if he is not a team player, we have a problem. There should be some ways to build a strong team, and I think one thing I like a lot is that if the entrepreneur is willing to hire talented people, even more talented people he is himself, and willing to take that kind of risk, it would be important. And then almost all success stories are such that you hit the wall once or twice, And despite the unlucky changes in the market or some other stuff, you just are determined to make it happen. You are a very strong and willful person to make a success story. That would be a good thing. But also, having such a strong personalities in a team means that there is also often clashes between the VCs and the management team. It's not an easy thing. If you have people with strong will and power, it means that there will be problems as well. And then, of course, the motivation there behind is the target of the entrepreneur or the team to just have fun or make a great exit. For VCs, the exit is a big thing. That's our business, to invest other people's money and return them by selling these great new companies. So teams win, superstars lose. So and what a good team means, it's about diversity, having different age, different background, different experience. That's a good thing. I fairly often, especially in the younger teams, all the people are same age, being around with same stuff for the last 5 years, and they share too similar view to the world and market, which is not a perfect thing. But still, it would be good if the team would been working before, especially if the team been working before, had a hard time, and winning the problems together, so that the team being kind of attested that they can sustain a stress, sustain problems, and still function well. That would be great. But we don't have too often that luxury of looking teams which been together beforehand and being through rough times. And again, for the teams, the same thing, that for the whole team, it shouldn't be it's important that the team has a strong motivation to change the world and make things happen, but also there must be a clear motivation to make the financial success, not just have a nice time. And then when we jump in as a VCs in the early stage, it's typically most important skill is to have agility and kind of flexibility to seek the best business model that works. Because in the very early stage, we don't know yet what's really working, what's the right product, business model, target market channel, And there is a lot of work and agility needed to get that done. But once that's kind of found and we are there, it's more about the skills, how to make it scale, it's getting international, going further, going to US, going to UK, going there, building bigger deals. And once we are through the rapid growth phase, it might be more about getting rid of the extra fat and getting things well oiled and functioning, and more of a process-oriented thing. And then, if we are big enough, there might be a phase where we need a CEO who is looking good on newspaper for an IPO, or looking good for a negotiator and a person to make a big M&A exit to IBM or something like that. And it is fairly uncommon to have one CEO who's able to do all these four stuff. They're fairly different. Need different skills, different kind of things. And it means that it's quite often makes sense to change the CEO during the process. Of course, we have Bill Gates, we have Steve Jobs and people like that who've done it. It's not impossible. But again, it's not typical. So that's the one reason we fairly often, although we look as a VCs, we look carefully at the teams and pick it up, but often I think it would be good to have a serious heart-to-heart discussion with the VC when they jump in about what the team is today, what are the real weaknesses there, and discuss openly what kind of a development paths there might be in the future to get the team stronger, and whether the CEO should at some point step out. I myself, for example, if you look at the Solid company, I stepped out as being a CEO after the first 5 years. I would say that my strong area in a startup is more in the first 2-3 phases, not in the last 2 phases as such. So I'm using myself as an example as an entrepreneur where I felt that now I want a more experienced guy to this next step, and different type of guy for the next step for the company. And of course, there's some other reasons to change the CEO, and that's that things are not just going forward. And as VCs, we have fairly limited amount of means of fixing things. And we've invested in a company, and we see that there is some potential, but things are not just going forward. And one option we use fairly often is that we discuss of changing the CEO. It's not always the right thing. It just might be that the problem is totally somewhere elsewhere, but that is, of course, one of the very few options we have to really seriously try to restart the company and get things functioning. So that's used. But if I look Nexit history as such, we haven't done it that often. It's not something we do always. It just happens when things don't go well enough, and that seemed to be the best option to get things changed fast. So that was my fairly short story. Should I
Thank you, Artturi. I would like to 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay. Am I on? Okay. I would like to ask here also Heidi Kakko, who is running investment part in Estonian Development Fund, and she will give also a short overview about her thoughts, and then we have this kind of panel discussion as I told. Heidi, you.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. I will not talk about two different things than Artturi has already told you, and not a crucially different story than you have heard already yesterday. Yesterday you heard more from the entrepreneur's point of view. How would it be to maintain the control over your company, or how would it feel to lose a control over your company? And when I was asked to speak today, I was asked also to build up a small like a intrigue, or to shock you up, to show that there's a really fierce world out there, and sometimes the money providers, the investors, the venture capitalists, they can be really sharks. They can be wild animals, and they will fire you sometimes. So today, I just want to point out some additional issues to force you think whether you really need venture capital money or whether you need something else. As venture capital money is not the only source of capital in the market. And in the Estonian Development Fund, we are not truly private equity venture capital providers. We are a public fund. Sometimes it's even said that the public money is dummy money or dull money, and the public money should not decide where to invest or whether to invest at all. I would really love in Estonia to have a situation that the market is mature enough not to need that public sector money to be invested in early stages. But I'm afraid it's not going to happen too fast, because even in every developed market, we have the public money that invests in the very early stages, where the private investors would see the risk too high to go there alone. And the Estonian Development Fund also invests together with the private sector investors, so that we don't do the investments solely by us, but we do co-invest together with the private sector investors. I can even point some of them here. I won't right now. Afterwards, if there are questions, I would also like you to ask the questions from the private sector perspective side in Estonia. So, whether there is a conflict between the funders and the founders. What do you think? Is there a conflict? Can be. Very good. Can be. And why there can be will come back later on. One of my, I can say, mentors in venture capital, a lady that has invested into biotech as a venture capitalist investor for more than 20 years, said that every morning when she wakes up, she thinks whether today is the day I'm gonna fire the CEO as the founder of that specific company or whatever company she has invested into. And that's she really asks. And when I heard it for the first time, it sounded really like really cruel for me. So that how can it be that you really ask that from you every morning? So, but we'll go further and we'll come back to that. Let's go back. What is the startup about? Yesterday you were told about all the great stories of great founders, great entrepreneurs. Their personal experiences. There are very many different kinds of startups. Startup can be whatever of those different types. That's the sort of definition by Eric Ries and the typing of startups by Steve Blank. And you should ask whether my startup is one of those, and whatever kind of a startup do you do, it's still a startup, but it might need different kind of investors. If you have a social startup, or if you have a lifestyle startup, then most probably you don't need to go to Artturi to ask for the venture capital money, as you probably don't have a sort of born global company. And mostly the venture capital investors are not interested in really small or regional or local businesses. They do understand them, sometimes they even fund them, but usually they don't invest into those. And there's a question then whether to bootstrap. It means that you keep your costs as low as possible and you try to build your company with the help of that organic growth, that as far as it develops, you will have the financing and the sources, or whether you should go and find the money from somebody else. Sometimes it's tricky. Always it's hard work. And quite often it will not end with a positive result, as there are several ideas walking around in the market, and not all of them will be funded. And even if they are funded, it doesn't mean that they are eternally successful in these terms. But very often, what does the external financing provide to you is the speed of process. With organic growth, you can move further, but not usually as fast as with the help of additional resources from some other funder. And there are also different types of angels, different types of venture capital providers. As I said, that also the industry is changing from the perspective of money providers. When previously it was like family, friends, and fans, not fools, I would say, fans that have provided the first round, the very first round, that it's not even called the A round, but sort of seed money for the founders. Then the business angels is like the next round, and now already there are super angels emerging. And the super angels very often are the former entrepreneurs, the founders by themselves, who understand the industry. Artturi has also been first the entrepreneur, then the business angel, and then now he's representing the venture capital investments. It's like the moving step up, step by step. And venture capitalists also tend to come into the companies as early as possible, so that true venture capital investment companies are trying to move into the same segment as super angels are doing, because they understand that in order to see the best deal flow, to see the best cases, you have to step in as early as possible. And as today, starting an IT business is tremendously less costly than it was, then very often the founders, the entrepreneurs, they try to develop the company by themselves as far as possible to get the best terms from the funders. What is VC looking for? Artturi told about that, so I wouldn't really repeat the same things, But still, I would say that the team is the most important. And one is never a team. Just if you have a business idea, always reflect that idea to other people, to see their understanding, to see their reaction, to have a sort of sparring partner. It's like a game. You provide your idea to get the reflection, to understand whether you are really on a track, whether you, it's like about growing a baby. It seems that your baby is the most beautiful one, the smartest, the cutest, and if you open up your eyes and try to compare the things that you see in the market, sometimes it might happen that you see that the other baby is also as good, or there are some shortages that you can fix. About the market, about the growth of the market, about the exit opportunities, that is something that whatever funders would look at, like the most important thing to understand whether the business idea, the market opportunity is there for them. There can be different type of investors looking for different things. If the project is not suitable for the born global type of investors, it might be suitable for different type of business angels who are accepting lower risks and looking for also not so high growth. And there was also something Artturi said, but he said it in a very soft way, so that whether there is a protection for the business idea or model. Venture capitalists really like unfair advantages. Why? Because developing those services, those products, would take time, would take money. If you have invested a lot of money into something and you don't know how successful would it be in the market, you would definitely like to have a sort of certain period then nobody is following you or is not copying you from the point of business model, product or service, just to give you enough time to reach the best position in the market. So venture capitalists really like that there is some sort of unique advantage, not only the good team, but also the unique advantage that is related to your product or service, your business model. It's all about the people. Yesterday you heard the whole day long about the people, about the neurologic brain things, about the comparisons between the entrepreneurship and, I don't know, sex. That was Hannes's favorite topic. And, but it's true, not the sex thing, but the team thing, the people thing. So first you have to ask from yourself, am I really willing to do it? If you go for being an entrepreneur, it's very unsecure. It takes really a lot of effort. Are you ready for that? For example, if I look at the companies in our portfolio, are you ready that you move to the States like for 3 months, for 6 months, for a year, for forever, taking together with you your wife and your just a couple of months old baby? Or what if your wife says that I'm not willing to come with you to the States to be there, I don't know, startup companies, entrepreneurs, I don't know, companion. I have my own life, my own career, I want to proceed here. Are you ready to take that risk? It's a question of an attitude. And when I show to you those different types of startups, it's just about you and your motivation. Are you an entrepreneur? Are you an entrepreneur for a born global company, or is it what you are doing just for lifestyle things? So I like surfing, I will set up a boutique or a small shop for surfing stuff. And that's also okay. But then most probably the venture capitalists won't invest into your company. And what else? if it's all about the people, it's not only about the people who are entrepreneurs or who are start-uppers. It's also about the people who are funders. And there's always an ego question, not only from the side of the founder, that's my company, I have created it, that's my baby, I know the best how to raise the company, how to create it. And the funders they look at that and they would see it from the perspective angle, from a different perspective. I have one founder as a CEO in my portfolio saying that help the God to able me to understand when I'm not good enough for my company anymore, to be able to step back and to hire somebody who is smarter than he is and who is a better choice for the company. You need different skills. If you have studied like Master of Business Administration or Business Administration in the university, it might be that you lack something that is needed for being an entrepreneur. And most often you don't really study it in the school. And these two guys, Billy Durant and Alfred Sloan, they are both related to the one company. What company is that? Anybody knows? Does anybody know? Pardon me? A successful company, definitely. One of the guys is the founder of the company, and another is a CEO, a long-term CEO of the company. And that's company General Motors. And the founder, Billy Durant, he was a dropout, a school dropout. And he decided to go and sell cigars, not to continue with his educational career, but to sell cigars and to be an entrepreneur. And first he decided to invest into cartridges. And then he decided that, okay, those motorized things can also be something to be considered as worth. And after a while, the company was for a long time managed by a paid management team. As also said by Artturi, different phases of the company, they need different skills and different styles. That's one example I just wanted to point out. That's a sort of development staircase of one Estonian entrepreneur, I would say. And why do I bring that example? Very often it's said that if you fail once, then you're a loser. And I would ask that if you have failed and you have not learned anything from that, then most probably you're a loser. But if you have failed and you have learned something valuable out of that, then probably you're a winner. I do believe that the Estonian guys who sit here, they know that I'm talking about Ragnar Saiste, who was the founder and the CEO of our invested company, United Dogs and Cats. And currently he's running the company called Pipedrive. He's sitting with his team in the States most of the time. And I would say that I hope that he also considers that experience of managing United Dogs and Cats as a positive experience, because he has most probably learned something out of that. And he started as a marketing manager, basically. And then he decided to establish his first startup company, United Dogs and Cats. Then afterwards, he and similar to him entrepreneurs started the Startup Leaders Club. Then Garage 48 followed, and then another startup, Pipedrive. And now he's moving to the mecca of startup companies, to Silicon Valley, to really understand what is the born global startups mean. And I'm happy for him. So, let's wrap it up. Whether it's aim high or die, that's not so obvious always. It depends on you, what type of entrepreneurs you are. It's also okay to do the lifestyle companies, to do the small startups, to do the restaurants, the whatever type of companies you would feel passion for. You don't have to be a born global startup, but whatever you do, you will devote your time there. You will most probably have the tears and sweat and blood out of your nose sometimes. You are told sorrow and sad things sometimes. Sometimes you may accept those, sometimes you will reject those. But it always a long story with small steps. And there's one thing I would like to add is the companies usually die because they ran out of money. And they do run out of money because their team loses the faith. And that's the most crucial point. If the team loses the faith, the investors usually have only bad options, whether to change the team, and the damage is always there. The question is always only about the scale of the damage. And there's no investor really who wants to be in a position when the team loses the faith and there's nothing to do. If you want to do a different thing because you see that the market has changed, that's okay. You do the version 1, version 2, like pivot 1, pivot 2, but still, if you do believe into your company, then it works. If you don't believe, it doesn't work. And now we'll come back to the first question that was asked by the venture capital investor every morning when she wakes up. Is today the day I'm going to fire the founder? And then I asked her that if today is not the day, what do you do then? And then she said that if I decide that today is not that day, then I do everything what it takes to support the founders, to support the team, to support the CEO to succeed. And that's what we do also. If we see that there is faith, that there is a strength, that there is an opportunity, and the team is running, then we support the team. That's it.
Thank you for Heidi. Yes, I need this extra mic if it's there. I wanted to start with my own questions from my black book. Artturi, you have been CEO, founder of the companies yourself, and now you are a VC. What kind of difference you have noticed in your mindset as a CEO and as a VC?
Yeah.
Is there a difference?
Yeah, certainly there is a difference, and I think it has many layers. The one thing is also that meanwhile I've been getting more of an age and experience, and the more you see both successes and failures, you learn more. I think as a CEO, I was more of a salesman and trying to push things forward and looking with kind of a through pink glass the world as being sure that I'm going to make this happen. As a VC, I'm more aware that of these 10 portfolio companies, 3 of those will be dying, or maybe 4. So when I do an investment, I really much hope that this is going to be the success story, but I'm fairly aware that many of the investments we make will be failures, or I got to fire many of those CEOs, or at least some of those CEOs I like and which I invest in. So it's a different thing. As a CEO of company, you have just that company and putting all your effort on it, or you believed on it, and that's the difference.
Okay. Heidi, so you both were talking about what VCs are looking for from the team, but if to go very practical now, what could be like the perfect opening line to approach CEO? Is it like, hey, I'm Hannes, I have a perfect team, or what is it? Or hey, I am, and I'm gonna, I don't know, conquer the world. What is the perfect opening line for CEO?
I believe that both of them are perfect. If you come and say that I'm Hannes and I have a perfect team, then it's like, okay, good, can we see your team? So, and then you should have the references also of your perfect team. So it means basically what you have done before and how did you become that? How did you become that perfect team? That's one thing. Another thing, that if you have an idea or a vision how to conquer the world, then I would believe that it could be rather a peaceful conquering the world, but then you also should have something to support your idea, whether you know the market so well and you see that there is an opportunity and you're ready to prove it. So come and present it.
I mean, I can imagine that you will get this kind of opening lines every day, and in front of VCs there are like hundreds of business plans and hundreds of very self-confident CEOs talking about perfect team and conquering the world. But isn't it like the X Factor game that you have like a lot of candidates and you are looking the one thing which makes this team to succeed and be successful, or is it more a combination of all of those things?
One thing I would say here is that if we look the process of picking the companies we invest in Nexit at least, and I think in many cases we have many of the partners, not only one partner, but many of the partners, hopefully all of the partners looking at the team and analyzing it. And the one reason is that I might fall with one guy or one team or something, but the others have added value to that. My view is limited, they have another view. And when we as a different persons and a team like the other team, then it's a good mark. It might, though, get a bit problematic when Nexit team is a fairly distributed of nature. I mean, we have one guy in Silicon Valley, one in Sweden, and so on. So it's sometimes difficult to get a common view on anything if we have a lot of people and people with very different, not background, but different point of living and a view to the world right now. It sometimes, especially, maybe it's not about when we analyze the teams as such, but when we analyze the business models and how the market reacts. The mobile market, for example, looks very different looking from Finland or looking from US or looking from China. Mm-hmm. But again, yes, it is a X Factor game in a way. Quite often we learn a lot more from the team and how it really functions after we've been there for a year or two. Mm-hmm. It's difficult to learn a lot from a team during the process you make the investment decision. Though I must say one reason VCs asks tricky questions and kind of make analysis is to make the team work for them during the process. They try to decide whether or not this is a good investment. And the better the team is able to kind of solve the problems, the potentials VCs throw them, the more the VCs kind of believe that the team will solve other real business problems later on.
So you're doing this kind of X Factor game, that you're bringing the team there and challenging them and saying, hey, you cannot sing at all. Door is there.
Kind of, yeah. It's important for us to understand the team, how it functions, what are the strong and weak areas, and it just doesn't come like that. It needs an interaction, it needs a bit of a pushback, it needs time.
Yeah.
I have a sort of example that I have had a colleague who was an Estonian guy who has studied in Oxford, and we called him an English actor. He was brilliant in speaking English, and when he appeared anywhere, basically. He made such a first expression that you could die for it, basically. And that was basically it, the brilliant the first impression that basically killed you. And afterwards, when you digged deeper to understand whether there is anything else, usually it was the first impression, basically. And that's quite a good example, because later on, I have seen the cases quite often that if somebody is presenting the business case, sometimes it's written in a very high words, the most brilliant, the largest, the biggest, and usually you don't really believe if there are so many so-called bullshit bingo words in there, then you automatically will dig into to understand whether there is really content also or only the facade. And that's what I really would like to see, that if somebody makes a statement that we have the most brilliant team, then you have to be ready to prove it. And usually the proof comes within the process. If you ask the additional questions and they provide lousy answers, or you see that they basically provide the answers that they have learned by heart, then it's usually a lousy case also. And as Artturi said, you will start to learn about the team within the first years of investment. And that's why we have created sort of virtual incubator called Seed Booster, that we take the companies into that incubator for 6 to 12 months. We run together with a team. We help the team to find the replies to the questions that we ask by ourselves, to prove whether the business case is really there, and to prove whether the team is able to work on that business case. And that's basically what the majority of the investors are looking for, to understand whether they can really bet on that team, or whether if they will reach the investment, they will just lose the interest.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I have a lot of questions, but I'm sure you also have.
Hello, I'm Eric. I would like to ask, how much do you feel trust your guts and inner voices in the first point and the first meeting? Like not the first meeting, but the first impression.
Do you want to
I think it's pretty much of an instinct thing. I mean, we don't have too much of a numerical means to get the exact figure that this team is 7.7. It's more about how we feel. Though we try to do some kind of a more kind of a precise analysis, but it's pretty much of a gut feeling.
It's basically about asking all the time, am I wrong? And if you give those different questions and you get those answers, then you always test it to the knowledge that you have. For example, we use also different experts to understand different industries as like a general fund to being open to all industries. We don't have always the expertise in-house. Regarding the market growth potential, the exit opportunities, the technology, we usually ask for expert opinions regarding the perspectives there to be able to understand it. Regarding the people, it's very much intuitive. So that if you feel that there is something wrong, you try to test it again and again and again, and to see based on the performance whether you are right or wrong.
Okay, thank you. More questions? Okay.
Hi, Tarvo Tamm, Connect Estonia. I have a question to Artturi. So I assume Nexit has invested both into the sort of pre-revenue or very small revenue startups and already into companies with a substantial revenue. So from the kind of team perspective, what are the sort of categories or I would say rather like red flags, what you don't want or when you won't invest into? So as probably you are kind of looking through a different sort of perspective or classes. So if you are looking at very early stage teams, so you know that there are not, everything is not in the place, compared to the more established, so which is more operational entity, and then it's a bit of a different case. So can you kind of give a very practical
red flags, yeah?
Okay, yeah, it's fairly true that if you have a, we invest sometimes even in an incubation case. We invested in a company where we had only the patent company and the patent. That's not a normal way for us. Typically, we invest in a company where there is the founder and a bit of a business ongoing and so on. And we might go sometimes in a fairly late stage where there is a well-functioning team. I think quite often we go in the kind of a Series A round where there is some funding already and some functioning already, where we feel that we accept that the team is not perfect yet. But what we look is that the team kind of agrees with us, the weak areas of the team. And we kind of agree that, hey, there are certain areas to be developed further. Sometimes it means that the CEO should step fairly soon as being the CTO if he's a technology-driven person or she, or it might be sometimes that we agree that, hey, the sales organization got to be rebuilt total and we need a new VP sales here, which is more international or something. That's quite typical that during the investment we take care that we share with the management team the vision where the company is willing to go. We are looking at exit, let's say, 4 years, 5 years from now, kind of sharing the view how we will go there, and we share that, hey, your team will need those kind of a talent during the phase. Maybe something right now, maybe something additional, let's say 2 years from now. And if we don't get a good feeling that the team really agrees on this, then it's a big red flag. If we are not able to discuss this openly, that's a big red flag.
But
follow-up, so that have you had cases like that everything else is perfect, but you kind of feel that the team or the key person, CEO, whatever, is a little bit too stubborn and something in a certain aspect, so that sort of on very much sort of on a certain way he thinks
yeah. I would say that there is fairly often such a red flag where the CEO is very confident that he is going to be the CEO until the end. And he is not willing to discuss seriously of replacing him. And fairly often we see that the person is very strong in some areas, but have extremely weak areas some elsewhere, and he doesn't recognize the areas where he is weak. That's fairly common thing.
Okay, we can take one final question. Artturi, will you be here at the lunchtime?
Yes.
Heidi as well. So if we have other questions, you can approach them and ask privately. But one final question, anyone? Yeah.
I actually had 2 questions, but I'm then going to ask just one. So back to the VC math, if you say that 1/3 of the companies fail, so at what point do you let go or let them rot in your portfolio? When do you decide that?
Never.
That's a really hard question.
Yeah.
That's,
we should do it earlier than we typically do as an industry. I think Nexit, with our first fund, which we started year 2000, we had the luxury of getting a real problems in a big time. So we were somewhere early 2001, a year we started. Less than a year when we started, we had already 9 investments, and we knew that this is not going to happen well. This is not going to end well. So we decided immediately, when we kind of realized this, as a team, we sat down and said that, hey, of these 9 companies, we are going to bring maybe 5 as a success stories, and 4 we are not able to fund that. And we just decided that we will discuss, we as a partners sit down and keep talking until we know which are the 4 we let go. And we did it. It was not fun.
It's a heartbreaking question, actually, because when you have invested already into the company, it's like becoming your baby as well. And it's always about like burning the good money after the bad money. If you have made a wrong decision while investing into the company, it's really difficult to admit it sometimes. And if the team has lost the faith, then it's basically the situation when you are weighting up the invested money against the loss that you will you are taking in there and against the potential investment that could perhaps save that company. And Artturi, correct me if I'm wrong, but from the VC's perspective, we have to decide based on a portfolio.
Yeah.
Because individually taken, those specific companies may be worth of devoting much more managerial energy on a senior level from the VC investor. But still, if you have those 9 companies or 5 companies or 15 companies to be paid attention to, and there are like 2 or 3 that are significantly weaker, and you have to put there so much effort to save them, usually you will ruin your other companies as well.
Absolutely.
Because you won't have time to devote those relatively better companies, and you will kill them.
Yeah, I think this is a very good point. We VCs, the other thing we do a lot is that we put a lot of our effort on saving some companies where we create very limited amount of value. Whether it's dying or just returning our monies back, it's still a fairly small difference. But the other company where we might, which is doing well, we don't maybe spend time, but there an extra effort might, instead of returning 10 times our money, we might 20 times return our money, and that would make a big difference from the portfolio view. So that's something we should do. We don't do plenty enough of that, but we should do.
So, but the VCs are also only the people,
Yeah.
so as the entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Artturi. Thank you, Heidi. And as
Pleasure.
told, they are here lunchtime.